All right, fighting for you to have a chance to pursue happiness. We talked about this at the top of the program, pursuing happiness, incredibly important. Well, Senator Bill Cassidy, I have, some things that he does that I like, some things that I scratch my head about, but he's introduced a legislative package that would take big steps toward defending American workers' free choice, the ability to go to work where you want to go to work. The proposal comes in stark contrast to other proposals that seek to expand union bosses' coercive power, like, not secret ballots, figuring out who's voting where, bullying people to vote for a union when they don't want to, but they're, intimidated. We can't have that. Mark Mix is joining me now. He's the president of the committee and foundation of the National Right to Work Committee, which is a 2.8 million member public policy organization, serves as president of the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation as well. Mark, welcome back.
Steve, good to be with you. Thanks for the opportunity. It's always something to talk about when it comes to labor law and what's happening in Washington, D.C.
Well, sure. And we just, in the break, talked a little bit about the elections and the midterms. The socialist candidates doing incredibly well. In fact, every place you go now, the socialist candidates are saying more union power to the bosses, more money for the union rank and file to supply to candidates that are, socialists, frankly. This is a big concern, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. If you look at the people that were endorsing Mondami in New York City, there was a lot of communist groups and a lot of socialist groups, the Democratic Social America. But Steve, there were a lot of union logos on that endorsement page for Mondami, and that's really scary. The United Auto Workers Union, a lot of the government unions, AFSCME, SEIU. When you think about individual employees that are compelled to pay dues to those unions as a condition of keeping their jobs, and then having union officials go out and talk and support with your money someone who has a radical agenda that's really anti-American, anti-freedom, anti-liberty. When you see that, you see all that you need to understand why it's important to protect individual workers' rights through labor policy, like Senator Cassidy is doing here with a series of bills that address several different points of union privilege and power that have been granted over the years.
It's been given the acronym, the Results Act, which would knock down several legal barriers that union bosses often manipulate to block workers from voting on unwanted union out of their workplace. Like if there's a union there and it's not doing what you hoped it would do or imagined it would do, trying to get them out, to extricate them, can be very difficult. Tell me about this new act, the Results Act, what it would mean.
Yeah, well, there's lots of pieces to it, Steve. I think there's going to be a total of 8 bills in the package. Senator Cassidy, Senator Banks from Indiana, Senator Scott from South Carolina, Senator Tuberville from Alabama have all added to what has been a kind of a result of 2 hearings on labor law reform. And the issues that we're really interested in, Steve, there's lots of little things. And I think continuing to use the government to regulate labor policy in America is problematic. That's how we got started down this road in the 1930s, when the federal government imposed forced unionism on the country. And so over the last 95 plus years, the barnacles that have attached to the hull of that boat have gotten to the point where these types of measures are necessary. But for us, for example, when you're an employee and you're trying to get rid of a union, to your question, Steve, it's very hard to do so. Your ability to decertify, to throw the union out, is extremely limited by National Labor Relations Board precedents. Senator Cassidy reaches out to that and says, you know what? We should let the federal courts adjudicate some of these matters so that you have stability and you're protecting the rights that workers are supposed to have under the National Labor Relations Act. So the ability for employees to say, we want the union out, making that process easier, making it more private to get into a union, saying we got to have secret ballot elections as opposed to card check or NLRB certifications because of an alleged unfair labor practice charge. Lots of interesting pieces here. All of it adds up to increasing the power of workers' rights in the workplace.
And what do you think the chances are? Obviously, the Democrats are never going to go along with this. I don't think so, anyway. Even people that seem to be a bit more reasonable lately, like John Fetterman, they're union supporters. John Fetterman, make no mistake, he's a Democrat. He didn't agree with his colleagues on the shutdown, which I don't know how anybody could, but that's where we are. But he's still going to be a guy who votes for union power. They all are. Bernie Sanders, AOC, all of the big names in the Democrat Party are going to vote for union power. How do you make this acceptable? How do we get this through?
Well, we have to talk to the American people about it, and we have to do these types of things to discuss it on air and communicate with the electorate. Steve, we know this, that an informed electorate is the only way we can preserve this grand experiment in self-government. So the point is, let's have votes on these bills. Let's have politicians take a stand. Imagine this. Let's have them take a stand on issues that have popular support, and let's hold them accountable. That's the secret of this method. It's kind of the blocking and tackling of American policymaking and American politics. And so the fact that we're having a debate over this, the fact that we're talking about it is an important part. I was watching the show a little bit before, and when Charlie Kirk asked an economics major about whether he heard of Bastiat or Rothbard. I mean, it's amazing that people don't understand this. And I don't think a lot of people understand the power and privilege that organized labor has gotten. And so talking about these issues, having the Senate address them, and having legislation that we can point to, talk about, and put examples to is a really important part of the process of getting this done.
It really is. And look, when you talk about economics, put people in charge of their own future. The problem that you have in this country in some states, and the Right to Work Foundation and National Right to Work obviously pushes back against this every single day, people ought to have a choice as to whether or not they're part of a union. If you don't want to be part of the union, how can you be forced, required to join the union to have a job? This is America. Free choice, and all that. To me, what you do shouldn't be necessary, but sadly it is.
Well, I appreciate that, Steve. You're right. We should have never met each other. That's the problem.
Fair point.
Because, right. I mean, this idea is so simple. It's so simple. I mean, allow workers to choose whether or not they want to be in unions. I mean, at this point, Steve, statistics show that only about 6% of all union members have ever voted on the union that represents them in the workplace. This idea of these, legacy contracts that exist in perpetuity is something that we need to address too. But the ultimate sin in all of labor policy is exactly what you just said. Forcing someone to pay a private organization in order to work in America is outrageous. It will end, but it comes with with battles like these where we have to fight, expose this privilege and power, and then we have to fight to change it and reform it and make sure individual workers are able to choose whether or not they want to support a private organization in order to get or keep a job.
Yeah, I think the worst part of it is that they collect union dues, and as you pointed out, then they give it to candidates, and they go out and they stump for candidates that do not have these people's best interests in mind. Look, unions are about money and power, much like politicians too often. And so compelling people to give money to organizations they do not support philosophically is a terrible thing. Anyhow, how do people find you? How do people find out more about the National Right to Work movement in this country?
Yeah. Just real quick, Steve, Thomas Jefferson said it's sinful and tyrannical to do that. And you can find more information about Right to Work at nrtw.org. That's where your workplace rights can be. You have answer questions about that. That's the foundation's website, nrtw.org. nrtwc.org if you want to find out about this legislation, both in Congress and in your state legislatures.
Yeah, it's important. All politics are local, so start right in your local union shop if you want to help correct some of the mistakes we've made over the last few years. Mark Mix, always appreciate seeing you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I wish we hadn't met because that would mean we lived in a better place. But he's a great man. I like Mark a lot, and we've known each other for years now because the fight for you to have the freedom to choose where you want to work, when you want to work, how you want to work, that should be up to you, not to a union boss. That's where we stand here. Freedom, American freedom, right? All right, coming up, got something a little more fun for you. We're going to have a little bit of fun after the break, so don't go anywhere. This is The Steve Gruber Show.